Hello and welcome to Untold Chapters with Austen Macaulay Publishers. Today, I had the pleasure of speaking with Trevor Colt MC. Trevor Colt is a former soldier who served his country with pride and passion for 20 years. He was awarded the Military Cross in 2006, a prestigious award for those who demonstrate exemplary gallantry. In 2008, he was awarded a Presidential Seal Coin for his work alongside the US Marines by former US President Bush. Now retired, Trevor focuses his energy on campaigning for veterans with a special focus on mental health and has raised over £250,000 for veteran causes. In his latest release, Exploitation, Trevor offers his unique experience of the challenges and sacrifices of the military service. It is his second release and has already reached over 165-star reviews on Amazon.
Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me. I do appreciate it. I like a good chat. It's been one of those mornings where I got up this morning and I've already been to the lake. I've dropped my son off. He's got all set up for fishing and I'm just now taking each day as it comes. I just relax now.
Oh, amazing. I'll try not to keep you too long then.
No, it's okay. Honestly, I've got all the time in the world.
Okay, so we're here to talk about your latest release, Exploitation, released earlier this year in June. Can I ask you what made you want to release another book?
Well, I've actually started on another book. I'm on chapter 9, so I'm actually in the middle of another. So I like to keep busy. The thing is, we hear this pushed around everywhere. Everyone seems to wear the badge of honor PTSD, and the truth is, if you really do have PTSD, you need to keep on top of it. And in order to keep on top of it, you have to have a busy mind, and you always have to have goals and things and projects and go. Because the minute you get rid and you have nothing to do, then you start to dwell on the past and you start to think about nasty things that happened to you on the battlefield. So I keep busy. The second book, Exploitation, was brought on with the first book, which I'm not going to mention. I didn't get to. There was just so much I want. I keep loads of diaries, and there was just so much I wanted to get out that there was just too much. And since leaving the military, I found it a struggle daily. For instance, I still get dozens. I think I wake up to about 50 or 60 emails a day. Throughout the day, about another 50 or 60. And it's loads of veterans complaining the fact that they're not being looked after. Some are waiting on compensation. Some are being let down. Medical documents are missing from their. So exploitation for me has a double meaning. It means how our government exploits our armed forces to go and fill their own political agendas by sending us into battle. And it also means how we exploit our enemy. The old days, we used to use a word called interrogation, but because it was such a nasty word, we got rid of it and we changed the word and called it exploitation. It's still the same thing, just a nice, prettier word. So exploitation is something that I was involved in because whenever I was in Afghanistan in 2012, I was part of the Intelligence Exploitation Force, and it was my job to fly out under darkness and pick up high-value commanders, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and bring them back for exploitation and to prepare them. So I learned a lot about that. And on my last tour of Afghanistan, everything clicked into place for me mentally. Where, excuse me, the first couple of tours I did in Afghanistan were war fighting. I mean, going in, getting dropped off in a helicopter, blowing holes in compound walls, go and kill the enemy or capture the enemy. So they were quite intense. But then as I got older and I could see that I wasn't feeling 100%, I was starting to sort of have nightmares and sweat and palpitations and anxiety. I knew I was falling apart mentally, but I didn't want to admit I was falling apart mentally. So I moved to a role which took me out of combat. But I seen what happens behind closed doors, and I didn't like it. And that's what tempted me to. Well, that's why I wrote the book Exploitation, to get a lot off my chest, basically.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I know you talked about it, you sort of use it as a way to keep yourself busy, keep your mind busy. Is there a moment in writing that you can pinpoint that changed you?
Do you know what? I get caught. I mean, I'm very lucky that things change me whenever I'm writing bits. I go through certain parts of my diaries and I write bits down. But whenever the bit that sort of gets me emotional is thinking about how my mental health ruined my marriage, and how I became homeless, and how I had to fight from the bottom to get back up. And I use writing to get that out. But I see my we're still separated, but we've been separated for about 3.5 years. I see her every day, well, most days anyway. And my heart sinks because I know that, I could have fixed things, but I was in a bad place mentally. But it wasn't until people read my book and they leave comments about it that it hits me hard, if I'm honest. But this is the issue I've got with writing. I don't proofread anything. I don't think I have to. I mean, I try and pay different companies to do it for me because I don't want to read back at some of the stuff that I've written, because I find it hurtful. So I never read my own stuff. That sounds weird. The minute I write a chapter, it goes, and I write another chapter, and it goes. I try and get someone to proofread it. I get my mother to read it. She'll try and proofread it a little bit, and then it goes obviously to Austin Macaulay to get proofread. But I try not to read my own stuff, because I write it down because it's from the heart. It's from my diaries, and once it's written, it helps me close a part inside me so I can move forward, if you know what I mean.
So it's your way of compartmentalizing. I think that's the term of coping with feelings that maybe you don't always want to think about. They're there, they're on the paper, they're out there for other people to read. Yeah, amazing. I think that really comes through in your book. It's very honest, it's very raw, it's unadulterated, it's just you. So that's amazing. So if we could look back on, you've had to face so many obstacles, so many barriers you've had to overcome. Do you have one that you could say was the most difficult, and why that was the most difficult to overcome?
So well, there's been quite a few different stages. Recently, I'm going to be honest. Walking out of my home, handing the key over, and then wanting to kill myself, if I'm honest, taking loads of drugs, because I couldn't bear to be on a planet without being with my wife and son. So that was probably the toughest. That was, and that was all down to me not owning up that I had mental health issues, and brushing it aside, and not knowing. Now, bear in mind, I would never lift my hand to my wife or to any female. It's wrong, but knowing that when I was going through mental health recovery at PTSD resolution, and when I was going through it in stages, I tried that. I tried hypnotherapy. I mean, the doctor used me as a guinea pig for so many drugs. Whenever I was able to sit back and look at where I'd been and where I'd gotten to sit back and think that I had mentally abused my ex-wife with the way I spoke and the way I got on was probably the hardest thing to take, because she didn't deserve it. So I mean, it's just, I mean, I haven't been with my ex-wife now, as I said, 3.5 years, and I still continue to pay her rent every month. I don't want her to struggle. I still do things, and it drives me forward, because when I see her and my son smiling happy, it's sort of, that's the hardest thing. But as I said, I really don't have a bad bone in my body unless you give me a gun and put me on a battlefield.
So yeah, I think I remember reading that in your book towards the end, where you had that moment, and it sort of dropped, and you handed your key to your ex-partner. And again, I think you were very honest about your journey with recognizing the trauma you'd faced, and the different medication that you tried, and having to go back and say to those medical professionals, actually, this one wasn't quite right. This isn't working for me. And I think personally, that's a really important conversation, especially now with mental health nationally is just at an all-time low across the board. And I think a lot of people, whether they're veterans or if they're facing a different form of trauma, I think that's a really helpful story for them to read. If you could give someone that's struggling with mental health one piece of advice today, what would that be?
That's a very good question. There's advice that I would give, but no one would take it. And that is to share. You need to sit down and share what you're going through with your partner or your wife or your husband. Because unless you share it, they don't know the journey you're on. And the more you try and keep that inside yourself and don't want to share it, it eats away at you. And you don't realize that you're giving off a sort of a presence where everything. No one wants to be near you. Nobody wants to be near somebody that has all these issues, and everyone can see it apart from them. So you need to share it with your partner, your wife, your husband, because if you don't, it's only a matter of time before that all comes crashing down.
I think that's great advice to give to people, to not be so isolated and speak out. So to finish off today, is there anyone you'd like to give a special thanks to? I know there are many people that you met along your journey from a very young soldier to where you are now.
Do you know what? There's so many people that I owe thanks to. Whenever I was in the gutter, and my mental health fell apart, I walked out of my home, I handed the key in. I didn't want to spend any money in my account because I had a joint account, and I felt guilty about buying myself a sandwich or something because I wanted my wife and son to have the money that was in the bank account. But there was people that reached out to help me, and you know what? It's strange now, but I had phone calls from Lawrence Fox, Bear Grylls, Ant Middleton. All three of them reached out to help me. I had Matthew Marsden, who's a great actor in America, offered to send a jet across to the UK to pick me up. And I had Rob O'Neill and people offered to go and collect me and bring me for mental health treatment. I mean, and that only happens whenever you actually whenever you try your best to help other people. Sometimes it comes back to help you. I mean, PTSD resolution lifted me up and got me to where I am. But you know, if it wasn't for my son Sebastian and my parents, you know, constantly phoning me and checking up, you know, and I live for them, if you know what I mean. My son, everything I do today, I try and achieve for him. I mean, the first book I wrote, the royalties go into his bank account every month. This book, Exploitation, I think they start paying me next year. But all the money I earn from these books goes to my sons for his future. And I hope that, you know, and by the way, the first copy of every book that I write, I always do a dedication to my son. And so he always gets the first copy.
Oh, perfect. That's really lovely. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Trevor.
If anything discussed today has affected you, please know there is help out there. Visit the Samaritans website at samaritans.org or call 116 123. You can listen to Untold Chapters by Austin Macaulay Publishers on our website at austinmacaulay.com. It is also available on our YouTube page, Austin Macaulay Publishers. If you would like to hear more from us, make sure to like, share and comment on our page. Thank you for listening.